Hello there, my name is Salim Javed and I'm an assistant professor at the Faculty of Mass Communication and Media Technology at SGT Universities. We have been talking about different kind of cinema, and this lecture focuses on the second half of 1980s. So far we have covered the 5 years of 1980s and what kind of a cinema was making. So from 1980 to 1985 we have covered. So in 1986, one of the biggest film was Karma, which was again Subhash Ghai, The Showman. All these titles are because of the films, Hero, Karma, and all these films that he was coming up with every year. Nagina is there, Amrit is there, Jangbaz is there, then you have Adhikar, Naam, a beautiful film by Mahesh Bhatt, and then you have Ilzam, you have Swarg Se Sundar, Angare, you have Shatru. All these films are like very interesting film. Naam, if you watch that film, when people go abroad, what kind of a situation, what kind of a life they live, they want to come back. So it is all about all that, but very sensibly made. But if you really want to see a brilliant film of this time, of year 1986, my recommendation is New Delhi Times. Ramesh Sharma and Romesh Sharma, they made this film. You would wonder, if I will not reveal much about this film, but if you watch this film, you will wonder why you have not seen a film like this, and how come a film like this is made in 80s, whereas we keep on blaming 80s for senseless cinema, full of violence, very tacky kind of titles. You may laugh, like Tamacha is one of the titles. I'll be reading different titles during the lecture. I prepared one, so I have bring a sheet also. So I'll be reading out titles, and when you'll be listening to all these titles, you will find that some comedy is going on. The title will definitely make you laugh. Now, year 1986. If you really want to see something, watch this film, New Delhi Times. This is a highly recommended film. I'm not sure whether you find it on, but you will find it on some OTT platform for sure. Highly sensible cinema. Then by year 1987, you have Hukumat, you have Khudgarz, and Mr. India, directed by Shekhar Kapoor. Something like this was not made before. Absolutely a gust of fresh air in 1987. Watch it if you have not seen. I'm sure whether you are young, old, or like when I teach in my classes, the students are basically 19, 20, 21, and when I ask them to see this film, they just simply love it. So you are of whatever age, you will fall in love. It was absolutely a different take. Technology was same. This film also has very interesting songs. But when you come to story, and when you come out from cinema hall, you have that taste on your tongue, and you realize something interesting we have seen. It's the magic of Shekhar Kapoor. Then you have Nazrana, you have Aag Hi Aag, Insaf. Another film very interesting in 1987 is Pushpak Vimana, or Pushpak Viman, or somewhere you have only Pushpak. Sangeetam Rao made this film, and when you see this film, it's like modern day silent film. There is a individual hero. He is unemployed, and then he goes through different kind of situations, and this film has no dialogue. It's a modern day silent film. Like, people praised very high when they saw this film, which won Oscar, which was a modern day silent film. The name is slipping from my mind right now, but a very interesting experiment. I'm not saying that these two films, which is better, which is not better, I'm not saying all that, but even 80s has they had dare to experiment. And Pushpak, when it was released in North India, it was released only as Pushpak, and this is a film which has got different names for different states when it was released. So this is another very interesting fact about the film. Then you have Awam, and guys, if you have not seen Loha, trust me, you have not seen anything. I'm not recommending it as like New Delhi Times, or I'm not recommending it some other way. But if you have not seen Loha, it is hilariously funny. Obviously it is made in all, all in all the sensibility. But what you cringe about 80 is that it had violence, it has nonsensical situations, it has all these Dharmender and everybody of his contemporary was in middle age, and they were playing just themselves. Dharmender is playing that I am Dharmender, so I can do anything. So it's like modern day Salman Khan is doing film. Then you have Satyamev Jayate. Guys, do watch Loha. There are interesting titles like Loha. Then you have Zalzala, and very, very interesting titles. And find this. Now, by year 1988, we were moving. Now we are moving towards the closure of this decade. You have Tezab and Chandra. It is something which is like laying foundation for films like Satya, Shul, all that cinema that you and I are familiar with. But Tezab is there, and another film, Parinda. These two films, Parinda, I think is 1989. Tezab is a milestone film. Technically, it's a milestone film, though it is absolutely commercial and everything, but it's a milestone film. Then you have Shahenshah, Tino Anand, full entertainer. Khoon Bhari Maang, I was talking about Khoobsurat and Khoon Bhari Maang in the last video. Then you have Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak, which is directed by Mansoor Khan. Now, when I was talking about this particular film, Ek Duje Ke Liye, I talked about Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak. Now, it is like shocking ending, the element that I was talking about. So these two films technically, they are similar in that particular context. Then you have Pyar Ek Mandir, Sone Pe Suhaga, Hatya, Paap Ki Duniya, Tamacha that I was talking about, interesting titles, Himmat Wala, Tamacha and all these. Then you have Kabza. Now, this film, year 1988, even it was a surprise for me when I was doing research. There is a film that I have written, The Deceiver, Nichols Meyer, directed by Nichols Meyer. Now, it has no ranking, by the way, or most of us, even scholars, may not know about this film. It's a Smile Merchant production. Now, when I saw this film, I saw it last week only. I was just happily surprised that this cannot be a film of 1988. It's in English. Smile Merchant is Ivory production. That if you know about Ivory production, watch this film. Like New Delhi Times, if that is one recommendation, this is second recommendation. And it's a film which is set in 1825. It was there, so I thought that I should see it, I should not see it. I had no idea about this film. Why I'm talking about some particular films? Because then I'll be producing my argument that 80s is not as bad as people have thought about it. Watch Deceivers. Then you will realize that a cinema like this, we are not capable of producing even in year 2022. This is not, I'm saying it in all my senses, that when you see this film, we are not capable of producing a cinema like this, The Deceivers, in year 2022. It is one of the films that we must see. We must see. Then the last year of this decade is is absolutely Maine Pyar Kiya, which was Suraj Bad Jatiya. Then you have Ram Lakhan. Now look at the films and look at observe the way films are changing, like Himmat Wala, Tamacha, Khoon Bhari Mang. Khoon Bhari Mang is a sensible film, by the way. I enjoyed it as a kid, so I will not blame it much. But Tohfa and Tamacha is too much. It's absolutely, but just watch it to understand it. I mean, there's not much to understand. Now, observe the way films are changing. Now here you have Maine Pyar Kiya, which most of you may have seen. Ram Lakhan, absolutely an entertainer. Chandni, beautiful songs. Yash Raj. You have Tridev. It was a rage. The song was a rage from this film. Then you have Data, a huge success. But you have Elane Jung also. You have Chalbaz also. You have Mahadev also. And Parinda also. If Satya is accepted by people, Parinda is in the roots. If this film was not made by Vidhu Vinod Chopra, Satya would not have been made. The Bombay Noirs germinated from Parinda and Tezab and Chandran, and then you have Vidhu Vinod Chopra. Watch this. I mean, it's a simple story. There are two friends. One gets shot. The friend joins the gang to avenge the death of his friend. But the turns and twist leads it to national award also. It lays foundation for a very different kind of cinema. Like, if you like Oi Lucky Lucky Oi, suppose, or you like films like Vicky Donor and all these things, this is there in between. On the one hand, you have films like Elane Jung. It's a huge scale. I'm not saying that Anil Sharma, who has given us Gadar also, is a small director. No. But when you look at Elane Jung and when you look at Parinda, films of the same year, both the films are hugely successful, but you see the difference in approach, in sensibility, and one is forgotten and one is almost validating a new trend which will be starting in 1990s. Now, all these films, I mean, this is a list which was like, I have picked up films based on what kind of a business they did. So business was going on there, but there was another genre which was like running undercurrent, making sensible cinema which is close to heart, and everybody was like, I still watch them, and many of my generation people, they still watch it. Like Khoobsurat film that I talked about, you have Sparsh by Sai Paranjpe. You have Akrosh that I was talking about, Meri Jung and Akrosh I was talking about. Akrosh, there is a victim who does not speak. Till the end he does not speak. But when he speaks, it becomes Ardh Satya. Then you have Albert Pinto Ko Gussa Kyun Aata Hai by Saeed Akhtar Mirza. A beautiful film. In 1981, you have Silsila. Though, it was not a top, but Silsila is a beautiful film. Umrao Jan, made by... Now, on the one hand, you have Tamacha going on. On the one hand, you have, Giraftar kind of films going on, Loha going on, Elane Jung, Zalzala kind of going on. And on different side, you have Sparsh, Akrosh, Albert Pinto Ko Gussa Kyun Aata in 1981, Silsila, Umrao Jan, Chashme Baddoor, Ek Duje Ke Liye, Naram Garam by Rishikesh Mukherjee. On the other side, you have this kind of cinema. It is basically to give you a range that before we nullify anything, you should understand all the sides. Then you have Kamchor, Shauqeen, which you must have seen, it was remade recently. You have Bazaar, Earth, Katha, Angur, Namkeen, both films by Gulzar, Angur and Namkeen. But if you like, I like this film called, I like all the films, by the way. Shauqeen. Now, Basu Chatterjee, he is dealing with three legends in this film, and he is I mean, you imagine that you are giving Ashok Kumar a role of 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 someone who is like into, you know, he is shown as women, as a womanizer. But then you when you see the film, you realize, no, this is done with sensibility, this is done with responsibility. Then in the same year, in 1982, you have Gandhi, directed by Richard Attenborough. Bhanu Athaiya won first Oscar, first, she is the one, she is first Indian woman to win an Oscar for her costume design, and she won it with John Mollo in the film. Then by 1983, you have Masoom, Jaane Bhi Do Yaro, that I talked about. You have Sadma, Ardh Satya, the man who did not speak in Akrosh, speaks so much in Ardh Satya. Then you have Mandi, you have then Kisi Se Na Kehna, Rishikesh Mukherjee. Then you have Raiza Sultan in 1983. I have kept title of songs here. It's a disaster. This film was a disaster. It took 7 years in making. Not exact budget is known, but the facts and figure that I found was, at some places it was 4 crore, at some places it was 10 crore, and it had a box office collection of only 2 crore. It fell immediately as it was released. But today, if you really looking for an album, then Raiza Sultan is one. I'm not very comfortable with Hindi typing, but I wrote the title line in Hindi. Jalta hai badan ऐ दिले नादा, तेरा हिज्र मेरा नसीब है, आई जंजीर की झनकार खुदा खैर करे. Lyrics by Janisar Akhtar. Hayaam was the musician. If Hayaam was the musician, then why I wrote Lakshmikant Pyarelal here? I wrote Lakshmikant Pyarelal because earlier they were doing this film. There was a sitting going on, because for music you have sitting. So Kamal Amrohi came and they were in some sitting. So one of their juniors said Kamal Amrohi to wait. And Kamal Amrohi got furious that I am not doing film with Lakshmikant Pyarelal. Lakshmikant Pyarelal were hot cake at that point of time. So he called Hayaam, and this is how Hayaam did the music of Raiza Sultan. I mean, you really have to be mature enough to understand this film, because the kind of language that is being used, it was nominated in many categories, but it only won, I think, Art Direction Award for that meter. Then you have 1984, you have Saransh, Mahesh Bhatt, Sensible Cinema, Sparsh, Sai Paranjpai, Utsav, Girish Karnad. You have Basu Chatterjee's Lakhon Ki Baat. You have Saeed Akhtar Mirza, Mohan Joshi, Hazir Ho. All the names that you read in your any book of Indian cinema, they all are here. They are flourishing in 1980s. Then you have 1986. You have Mirch Masala. Then you have Chameli Ki Shaadi, Mirch Masala by Ketan Mehta, and Chameli Ki Shaadi is Basu Chatterjee. Then 1988 has Salam Bombay, Meera Nair. The second entry after Mughal-e-Azam, it becomes the second entry, and it was an official entry to Academy Awards, but it could not win, but it won Camera d'Or and Audience Award at Cannes Film Festival. National Film Award was granted to this film for the best feature film. Then you have in 1989 you have Salim Langade Pe Matro, again by Saeed Akhtar Mirza, and beautiful film it is. Beautiful film. Salim Langade Pe Matro. My name is also Salim. But if you really want to see something surreal it is called. It's like Dada and everything. You must watch this film called Omdar. It is unlike any film made in Indian cinema. Kamal Swaroop is the director of this film, and I can guarantee you there is no parallel of Omdar in Indian cinema. It can be high, like suppose if you say, sir, like if you see Wild Strawberry and everything, I will accept your point, but that is like very classic. Omdar, Indian surreal film, no parallel. I can bet on it. You know, when you have 80s and people simply brush aside the entire 80s and say this, that it's a decade we must forget and things like that, I they are not wrong. Like when I'll be reading titles, you will understand why they say that. But they have not seen films like Omdar Badar, Salim Langde Pe Matro. They have not. Many of them have not seen Salam Bombay, Mirch Masala, Chameli Ki Shadi, Spursh, Saransh, Utsav, Mohan Joshi, Hazir Ho, Raiza Sultan, Sadma, Arth Satya, Mandi. All these films they may not have seen. So before we conclude that this is good, this is bad, understand both the spectrum. See where you stand. Choose for yourself and just simply do not brush aside an entire decade based on somebody else's observation. Now this is being serious. Now let me just give you relief by reading out the names of the films, and then I'll tell why something like this was happening. So you have Lootmar, Takkar, Nishana, Chunauti, Zalim, Subut, Khanjar. Now this may sound very funny, but these are the titles of the film of 1980s. Then you have Dard Wardat, Sajan Ki Saheli, ये तो कमाल हो गया. अंधा कानून, मुझे इंसाफ चाहिए, तकदीर और दौलत के दुश्मन. Then you have जागीर, you have आज का MLA राम अवतार, पाखंडी, कामयाब, मास्टर जी, गिरफ्तार, आंधी तूफान, रामकली, टार्जन, माँ कसम. Then you have Sindoor, Majal, Jaan Hateli Pe, Kasam, Zalzala, Ilaka, Sautan और Farz Ki Jang. These used to be the title. Now imagine why these titles are coming up. Now there are very interesting facts about 1980s. First of all, underworld money was being channelized in film industry. Now when your financier is having a certain mindset, what kind of films would you expect? So molestation is glorified. You know, whether a girl is accepting your proposal or not, you are jumping in front of her and saying that if you do not love me, I will follow you. So all these kind of activities are like being shown in mainstream cinema because money that is invested was coming from underworld. The sensibility was there. That sensitive with money, it is not only money that comes. A lot of other things also come. When you're like, if I may say so, it is very difficult to say it otherwise. When your producer is not sensible, how would you make sensible cinema? You know, because of this, because producers were not like, easy money was available there. Lot of good producers from Hindi cinema like B.R. Chopra, like many others, Navketan, they shifted to television. They were making Ramayana, they were making Mahabharat, they were making Tehqiqat. It was not easy to survive in those days. Then you have high rate of entertainment X. Then you have television coming up in 1982, Asiad game. Then you have lot of, then in the same decade you have private programming allowed. So lot of people started just not going to cinema hall. They started not going to cinema hall at all. They would like to sit back home and they would like to see. Higher entertainment rate means that tickets are expensive. Then you have Mardhad. You have only action and rape going on the screen. And all these films that I've just talked about, like Masoom and all, they used to get very limited releases. So if you are not living in a big town, chances of watching these films were very limited. Then you have like but NFDC played a very important role. The film that I talked about, like Gandhi was, it became a very profitable venture for NFDC. Then this is the age when TV, I just told you that by 1982 we have Asiad, then a lot of color transmission for 1982 is the color transmission. Then you have VHS. Piracy actually is the one which affected Hindi film industry, not just Hindi film industry, it is basically every film industry very much. Then you have underworld money, big producer moving to television. But whatever you say about 80s, There was one very unique point about 80s. It is the last era when common man was presented on screen. इस दौर की कहानियों में ट्रक ड्राइवर हीरो था. इसके बाद your and my heroes became rich. Now the stories are not your story or my story. It is about a wealthy guy who can afford everything. I am very tense. Okay, so you go on vacation. It takes them to understand. They don't understand that traveling takes money. For them, money is not a problem, but for most of us. So many, I would sum up this lecture as like the last decade of common man cinema, where a rickshawala was also going and where a sensible person was also going. But after this decade, the common man was missing from the big screen. Thank you very much.